There goes that song in my head. Earworm.
Good evening, everybody. Today is May the 3rd. This is a Moscow City regular council meeting. With that, Gina.
Good evening, everyone. Happy May. We are at a maximum crowd tonight. This is exciting. Please stand and recite our national Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Gina.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is a proclamation, and the proclamation is Bike Month. Whereas National Bike Month began in May of 1956, and whereas bicycling has been an affordable, environmentally sound mode of transportation, excellent form of exercise, and fun creation since the first pedal-propelled bicycle appeared in the 1860s. And whereas local government is committed to educating motorists and cyclists about safe vehicle operation to reduce accidents, injuries, fatalities, and whereas bicycling contributes to retail sales, tourism dollars, infrastructure, and policies that support community livability, and whereas bicycling commuting benefits both employees and employers through better health and fitness, lower costs, and reduced parking space, and whereas bicycling reduces heart disease, obesity, diabetes, and hypertension, and improves mental health and cardiovascular fitness. And whereas our region is gaining favorable recognition for bicycling friend connectivity, including the recently constructed Highway 8 underpass and a growing network of bicycle pedestrian trails. And whereas Bike to Work Week will take place May 17th through May 23rd, 2021, and whereas Bike to Work Day is Friday, May 21st, 2021. Now, therefore, I, Bill Lambert, the mayor of the city of Moscow, do hereby proclaim May 2021 to be Bike Month in Moscow, and I urge everyone who can cycle to work, school, shopping, and errands, or simply for pleasure. With that, I will move on to the consent agenda item.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Art and a second by Gina to approve the consent agenda as it is, and I will start the roll with Ann.
Aye.
Maureen.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Art.
Aye.
Brandy.
Aye.
And Gina.
Aye.
Okay, very good. I kind of mixed it up.
You did. Threw you guys off a little bit, didn't I?
That was good. Kept us
I want to keep them
listening.
on their toes, ladies and gentlemen. Staff recognition report. Gary Reedner, do you have anything for us tonight, sir?
Nothing tonight, sir, except there is a presentation for the Arbor Day.
Okay, we will deal with that during the public comment period, but, so we'll move on to item number 2, which is mayor appointments. And I have two of them this evening for the council to take consideration and vote on. And then Drew Davis, Planning and Zoning Commission, expiration date 12/31/2021. Rebecca Couch, Transportation Commission, expiration 12/31/2022, and she will be the University of Idaho representative. I would entertain a motion to approve these two candidates.
So moved, sir.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion by Gina and a second by Art to approve these two commission appointments. I will start the roll with Brandy.
Aye.
Maureen.
Aye.
Ann.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
And Art.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Drew, are you here with us this evening? And I did not see Becky Cat. Becky, are you here with us? Just looking around? Nope. I always appreciate the folks that join us on the commissions and work hard. We have a number of volunteers that do this, and it's very good having them. And I, as the mayor and this council, certainly appreciate those folks that work on our commissions and the job that they do for us. So with that, thank you very much. Now we'll move on to the public comment period. And what we do here, folks, is we give folks a chance to visit with us, tell us what's on their mind, as long as it is not on tonight's agenda and or something in front of Planning and Zoning or the Board of Adjustments. But if you have something other than that, please come up, state your name, and let us know what's on your mind. I'll give you 3 minutes. Okay, with that, we will move on. So, David Shaw, would you come up, please? I will give you 3 minutes, sir, on Arbor Day. How's that?
Well, thank you, Mayor Lambert, members of council, for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. So I want to give a quick report on our 2021 Arbor Day celebration. We celebrated this year at Lola Clyde Park, where we planted 3 cherry trees, a Rainier cherry and 2 Vans cherries. And we had, of course, members of the Tree Commission, students from Palouse Roots from PCEI. We had a representative from the Idaho Department of Lands and Mayor Lambert as well. And so part of Arbor Day is having this fancy ceremony, but the real part of Arbor Day is planting trees. So I got a couple fun pictures here. Mayor Lambert planting trees with the students from the Palouse Roots from PCEI. And then we had a surprise appearance by Mr. Tree, the kids really love. So a really fun event. The kids got their hands dirty. Some chose to use shovels, some used their hands, but we got those trees planted. And so also part of the Arbor Day celebration, and I'd like to present this tonight, 28 years of Tree City USA with the city of Moscow. So that's a fantastic accomplishment for our community. And so we've got this, 28 years as Tree City USA. We were also presented from the Idaho Department of Lands the Growth Award that we've had for 21 years. So that's fantastic, and of course our flag. And so tonight I'd like to ask Mayor Lambert to come down and accept these great awards we got.
Nice.
That's the flag. Do we want to open it up so people can see what it is?
Oh, that's awesome.
Hang on to this, Brandy. I want
All right. Okay, well, let's.
You're upside down.
Yeah, flip it over. There you go.
There we go.
Oh, good catch.
And then
Where
our
do we need to be?
Growth Award.
Just taking pictures.
I'm gonna take that picture. Okay. I'll get it.
Come on, Vanna. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Lambert.
Okay, before you leave, you fold this up so I don't mess it up. One thing I just want to say about that, it's so much fun being out there. We had 5-year-old kids, and I love it because get in the dirt. Kids love water, and they love dirt. Remus got kids, and they were having fun. They could throw a few dirt clods. Why not? You know, and we're out there. So as a grandparent and as, of course, as a dad for kids that were always into stuff all the time, and neighborhood kids as well. I'll throw that out there as well. It's so much fun because it's a good day, and if you see 28 years, so there's been past administrations for a number of years in the city of Moscow that this has been a big deal with, and there'll be decades in the future too. So thank you, David. That was so much fun. Lola Clyde Park. If you have never been out there, go out and check it out and take a look at it. It's a wonderful facility. So it's been many years in the making, and here it is. So the 3 cherry trees was terrific.
Thank you for being here, Mayor.
Thank you, David, very much. David gets double duty because he's on item number 5 with the Moscow Pathways Commission. We have David Shaw with us tonight, as well as Jonathan Gradin, and Jonathan is here as well. So come on up, Jonathan. You'll be a part of this as well. Oh, by the way, folks, if as we go along tonight, I guess there's 4 or 5 more people outside that would love to get in. So if you're here for just a certain thing or just for a little bit or whatever, please leave so the next person can come in and join us. And someday The protocol will be less, where we'll be able to have more folks in here, but for those that want to come. So with that,
Thank you, Mayor Lambert. It's my pleasure to welcome Jonathan Gradin, the chair of the Pathways Commission. Sorry, my mind was with trees. He's been the chair since 2015 and is an avid cyclist and pedestrian living a life of sustainable transportation. Although we're going to lose him this summer, he's going to attend law school in Boise come this fall, where he hopes to continue service in these areas as well. And so with that, please welcome back Jonathan Gradin.
welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. Let me see here. I think we can just, there should be I think it's like a 5 or, should be full screen on here. It's actually been a while since I've done this one. Oh. We've done this before. There. There, a way to, oh, here we go, view, full screen mode, there we go. All right, got it. Cross-platform compatibility, I had to do a PDF on this, so rather than PowerPoint. Anyway, I'm chair of the Pathways Commission, Jonathan Gradin. We are the Moscow Pathways Commission. Our mission statement, we promote and advise on the development of a path system in and around Moscow, embracing 3 important community concerns: active transportation, recreation, and resource conservation and enhancement. As David said, I am leaving this summer. I've been chair since the inception of this as a full-fledged commission. We were a task force before that, and our former chair had sadly passed away due to cancer. Big shoes to fill, but I hope to have done her proud. Anyway, that's pretty much the same as the past a little bit. I'm giving this presentation basically for the last 2 years, even though it's our annual presentation, because obviously last year we did not give our presentation, sadly, COVID, everything like that. So this is mid 2019 to present. Our recent accomplishments, we had back in summer of 2019, we had the over-under community bike ride and the grand opening for both the underpass under Steiner and White Avenue at the Troy Highway and the 3rd Street bike ped bridge. That was super fun. We had a huge turnout for that. Lots of families, lots of people biking. And then last year in fall, we did a commission-only socially distanced path tour. That's us on the bottom there, masked up and everything. And we also discussed some memorial naming opportunities along pathway features. Former Mayor Cheney approached us with a family who was interested in some sort of memorial opportunity, was just looking to get some ideas and things like that for that. And so we were able to provide some ideas and options, which I think is something that could be good going forward. We revamped the farmers market display brochures in 2019 or early 2020, like February, and then of course COVID hit and we didn't get a chance to use them. However, we'll be using them this summer with the farmers market going on. I also did up a pathway brochure thing here for the benefit of those in the audience here. I'm just going to move that over slightly. We have a little trifold brochure. David, do we have those down at the document rack down below?
I'll have to check.
Okay. Hopefully we'll get those there. We'll have them at the farmers market. So it's trifold, has the map inside and a little bit of information. Super convenient for visitors as well as people who've been here for a while. We also tried to get some lighting from US 95 to Steiner Avenue through Berman Creekside Park in the budget. However, that was on the consent agenda. The bids came in way too high and that's postponed. However, that's still something we want to do because that's been a major feedback from people, especially with the construction of identity and everything there. I think that was pretty much it for what we did the last over couple of year, a year and a half or two. We didn't meet super often last year because of COVID and everything like that. But looking ahead, we still have a bunch of goals and aspirations. We continue to want to research and propose safety improvements at road crossings. One of our members is also on the Transportation Commission, and so there's some interface opportunities there, especially this picture here is at Steiner Avenue. With people coming down the hill, it's a little crazy. The pathway's not marked, so we got to figure out something there, and any other pathway intersections. We still want to continue to look at an underpass under 95. I think we're looking for grant funding on that. That's community developments in their wheelhouse now. And we are looking to continue to pursue involvement for pathway planning in new developments. In fact, item 7 on tonight's agenda, that proposed development, we at our last meeting heard a proposal for in lieu of parkland dedication, part of a pathway system and park throughout that whole neighborhood, which is really cool, down on Palouse River Drive across from the Arboretum. We continue to want to locate what we call orphan paths, basically little path sections or pedestrian rights of way that are not either not marked or not part of the main pathway system, but can be used as vital connectors. At the top there, we've got a few examples where they put up signs, pedestrian pathway, to let people know that that is public right of way. We still want to find more of those. And one of our main goals, overarching goals, is to foster increased inclusivity and accessibility in the pathway system, both for kids, people with disabilities, anybody in the community, so that the pathway is all encompassing. And whether that means more community feedback on areas that are needed, like the lighting example, that's a safety thing for some people. That's our focus, is trying to do more of that. One thing that we also want to try to do is organize a volunteer cleanup project along parts of the pathway system, kind of like they do for the stream cleanup, but along the pathway, as a way for people to get involved. Obviously that's going to have to be COVID dependent and everything like that, but possibly this fall could be a good thing for that. And then the Highway 8 underpass, we want to explore some beautification options, maybe with cooperation from the Arts Commission. You can see down on the bottom right, there's a picture of me standing there. It's kind of dull and drab, and but a lot of potential down there for that. So yeah, that's pretty much what we've done. Not kind of same old, but also a bit of new stuff. So yeah, any questions or anything?
Well, Jonathan, but as you've been the chair since the inception of the Pathways Commission, you've done a tremendous job, and we will miss you. Mm-hmm. And of course, naturally, best luck for your new endeavors, because that's going to keep you busy for a while.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, the commission has done a great job, and the Pathways are one of our real treasures here that we have in our town, in our area. So, questions for Jonathan from council?
Those are all great, moving forward aspirations, and I hope your torch is carried on after you leave, and I'm sure it will be.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
So we actually, part of our thing was when we had our officer elections, Margaret Dibbles has usually been our vice chair, and she's chair of the Latah Trail Foundation. She stepped down so Tanya Dennison could become vice chair, so then she'll probably step into that chair role, and most likely Margaret will be back as vice chair, because she didn't want to be chair of two organizations. But we have some good institutional continuation going on. So yeah, should be pretty good built up. Well, thank you, Mayor.
I have one quick question.
Oh yeah.
Jonathan, weren't you talking about having a, on the Bike to Work Day, a space downtown? Are we doing that? Are you doing that still? What came up?
David can probably answer that better.
Councilor Kelly, we're still planning that.
Okay.
We'll talk about it at our meeting next week.
I just didn't want to be forgotten because I thought it was a cool thing.
Right. Yeah, so usually for Bike to Work Day on Friday, they usually have at 6th and Main is usually a little table set up with coffee or other stuff. And of course, with COVID this year, I don't think we'll have like treats or stuff, but I think we were talking about having some stickers or other stuff, the pathway maps, things like that. So, yeah, we'll be planning that more out at our meeting next week, next Tuesday actually. And yeah, meetings are second Tuesday of the month in the mayor's conference room and on Zoom. Well, or yeah, something like that. You know, this crazy time, but yeah.
Jonathan, just a few other points I want to make. Thank you very much for reusing those pamphlets that we couldn't use last year because of COVID. And this is it was kind of like a lost year for us. We're kind of starting to come around on this thing, so we're inching forward 1 inch at a time, and we're making it there. And Margaret Dibble, she's been a great force on the task force. She will take up any slack, I'm sure of it, knowing Margaret. And she's a good person to have on that as help. So thank you again for all your service and work, and good luck on your future endeavors, Jonathan.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 6, appeal of conditional use permit at 1400 East 7th Street. We have Amy Hendrich with us. Amy, greetings. How are you this evening?
I'm well, Mayor, and I'm happy to be here. Let me share my screen and make sure that the appellant can hear and see the screen. Okay, is the appellant able to hear me and see the screen?
I am. This is Kimberly Allen for the appellant.
Thank you. Okay, so tonight for your consideration, we have the appeal of the conditional use permit. Let me move this out of the way real quick before I get started. There we go. Appeal of the conditional use permit at 1400 East 7th Street. On February 19th of this year, Parallel Infrastructure Development applied for a conditional use permit to construct an 80-foot wireless communication facility located at 1400 East 7th Street. It's located on the property of the Church of the Nazarene. It would be a fully enclosed 800 square foot lease area, 20 by 40 feet. The design of the structure is to resemble a church tower. The design is also to accommodate 3 carriers per city code. The Board of Adjustment conducted a public hearing on the matter on March 29th and denied the proposed application. So to provide a little bit of background, some of you may be familiar with, in July 30th of 2018, Pearland LLC applied for a conditional use permit to construct similar wireless communication facility at the same location. The facility was designed at that point in time to resemble a tree. It was a stealth-style monopine tower. On November 18th, 2018, the Board of Adjustment denied the application, finding that the monopine tower was not consistent with the existing character of the neighborhood and would not be in harmony with the land surrounding the subject property, and the scale of the proposed tower was significantly larger than the other structures or trees in the surrounding area. On November 27th of 2018, Bush Law Firm filed an appeal on the behalf of the applicant. And on January 7th of 2019, Council reviewed the appeal and sustained the decision to deny the application. So that brings us to today. Today's proposed application. Subject property, if you remember from previous, is 5.31 acres. The proposed site is on the southwest corner of the Church of the Nazarene campus. Use this pointer so we can show the aerial. You're all probably familiar with the site. It is this parcel here in red. This entire city block here is the Church of the Nazarene campus. The zoning of the subject property is neighborhood business. and antenna towers are considered a conditional use within all zoning districts per Moscow City Code. Here is an image of the zoning showing that motor business or the neighborhood business district here and the surrounding R3. So these are some renderings of what the proposed tower would look like. It is 80 feet in total at the very top. Surrounding to the, I think it's the western side, there are 25-foot arborvitae hedges already in place. There would be a 6-foot masonry wall constructed around the entire lease space. Some of the surrounding heights, the top of the cross on the top of the Church of the Nazarene, I believe, is 66.4 feet in height. The top of the dome itself is just about 50, or just over 50. So you can see in comparison here. This is the site plan showing the entire campus, the church here, and then the lease space over here in the red. This is a zoomed in close-up of that red portion of the site showing the church tower here, the enclosed space for the needed generators, and a 12-foot type A landscape buffer here. So this is a view. I can't remember which direction we're looking, so let me move this out of my way again. To the north. These are a few renderings that the applicant had provided of what the skyline currently looks like and what it would look like if the tower were constructed. So this is from the north. This is the northeast. This is the southeast. And this is the south. So the applicant also provided some imagery about their service area and the target. As you can see, this service area that they are focusing on is this area here circled in red. The green is current coverage. Where you see those gaps is where they're intending to increase service. This is what the service would be increased to if this tower were constructed. The areas in yellow are the new service areas. The applicant also provided a site analysis of alternate locations. And I have some notes here, that way I make sure I get the right one. So site 1 they looked at was Hathaway, the Vista Water Tower on Hathaway up here. Site 2 was Brink Nature Park here. The 8th Street Water Tower was here. And then there was a location at East City Marketplace, commercial site here. So as far as development standards go for telecommunication facilities, we look at highway and residential zoning setbacks, security, lighting, noise reduction, signage, aesthetic conditions, and co-location requirements. I'd be happy to go more in depth with those if you have any questions on that. But the application did meet all the development standards and requirements. Public testimony was received. There were 3 emails in opposition to the proposal. At the hearing, public testimony was received by 5 individuals. 1 individual was neutral to the proposal, commenting that, in his opinion, 4G was better than 5G. 4 individuals testified that the proposed wireless communication facility is not consistent with the existing character of the uses of the surrounding neighborhood. These individuals expressed concerns regarding the scale of the proposed wireless facility, noise, and other aesthetic conditions. So the Board of Adjustment decision and findings. On March 29th, the board found that the proposal did not meet the criteria number 2 of the relevant criterion standards. Criteria 2 states that the character of the proposed use will be in harmony with the neighborhood and the surrounding land use. The board approved the relevant criterion standards for the CUP denial on April 7th, 2021. and an appeal was filed by Wireless Policy Group on April 16th of 2021. So tonight, council action is that you may either sustain the decision of the board in whole or in part, reverse the decision in whole or in part, or remand the matter in whole or in part back to the Board of Adjustment with comments and instructions for further consideration by the board, or take other actions as deemed appropriate. And then direct staff to prepare a written decision based on your action. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Questions for Amy from anybody on the council? Gina?
When I was reading through the transcript, well, over a couple days, it's pretty long. And I never did find the answer to what it's actually made out of. Materials.
I don't believe that was ever addressed. It wasn't something that was brought up at the meeting, and it wasn't included in the packet. So I believe it has to be based on what the written record was.
Yeah, no new data, but I thought I maybe missed it.
Nope.
Okay.
Okay. Kind of give everybody kind of an idea how this will work. This is not a public hearing. What this is an appeal from a public hearing that was held on March 29th, 2021. And so how it will work this evening is we will hear from the appellant here in a moment. And that will be the only person that we'll actually hear from. It won't be new testimony. It'll be what they're appealing at the process of it. With that, everything that the council will be working on is within this packet that I have up here that each counselor received for all the statements verbatim for what happened on that March 29th meeting. And so that we will keep everything within the confines of the documentation that we have in front of us. Okay. With that, Kimberly, you are the appellant, and I did not get your last name. Could you tell us who you are, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Kimberly Allen. I'm with the Wireless Policy Group, and I am representing the applicant and appellant Parallel Infrastructure.
Okay, thank you, Kimberly. I am Bill Lambert. I am the mayor of this fine city of ours, and we have all 6 counselors with us. So with that, you may start your process, ma'am.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Lambert and councilors. Parallel Infrastructure is the appellant here tonight, and we thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I provided the city with the notice of appeal that details the grounds for appealing the denial of the application for a cell site designed to look like a church bell tower at the Church of the Nazarene. The decision of the Board of Adjustment is unsupported by substantial evidence of failure to meet any of the approval criteria. As the transcript of the hearing shows, the board denied the application based on a finding that criterion number 2, which requires that the proposed WCF is consistent with the existing character of the uses in the surrounding neighborhood, had not been met. In reaching this conclusion, the board stated that the cell tower looked out of place, will not be in harmony with the land uses surrounding the subject property, including the Church of the Nazarene. The board noted that the surrounding neighborhood is primarily residential with few commercial uses nearby. And the board noted that the scale of the proposed tower is significantly larger than the other structures or trees in the surrounding area. The decision also mentions 4 individuals who expressed concern regarding the scale of the proposed WCF, potential noise, or other aesthetic concerns. The board's denial is not supported by the Moscow City Code, comprehensive plan, state statutes, or the evidence in the record. And accordingly, we ask that the board's decision be reversed in whole. It is important to note that the board also found that the applicant's proposed WCF and all of the regulations and development standards in Moscow City Code 4-3-5H telecommunications facilities, which includes regulations and standards for noise and aesthetics, had been met. Additionally, the board found that the applicant's proposed WCF met all of the other 6 criteria for approval of a conditional use permit under Moscow City Code 4-8-4B conditional uses. First, the board's finding that the proposed bell tower is not in harmony with the surrounding uses is not supported by substantial evidence in the record. The drawings and photo simulations submitted by the applicant show the bell tower structure was designed to reflect and complement the design of the church, with a topper similar to one on the church and materials and colors consistent with the existing church. A bell tower is a common feature on church properties, and the proposed wireless facility is designed as a bell tower, is not out of place on this church property. One board member stated that the bell tower was much closer to what they had had in mind than the monopine previously proposed, although he did not say what more would be needed to obtain an approval. One board member wanted the design for the bell tower to be more churchy. So if additional architectural elements of the church are needed to be reflected in the bell tower design, including the materials to be used to construct it, that can certainly be addressed with a condition of approval. Second, the board's finding that the neighborhood is primarily residential with few commercial uses is not relevant to the applicable code criteria for a WCF. Under Moscow City Code 4.3.4, WCFs are considered a public institutional use and are conditionally permitted in all zones. Additionally, this WCF meets all required setbacks from the neighboring uses, so the board's finding regarding the lack of neighboring commercial uses is not relevant to approval and is erroneous and should be reversed. Third, the board's finding concerning the scale of the proposed facility is subjective and not supported by the record. The height of the proposed wireless communication facility is generally consistent with the height of surrounding structures and trees. The roof of the church is 50 feet tall, and the church has substantially greater volume than the proposed bell tower. One board member noted that the height of the cross, as you saw on the planner's drawing there, is approximately 66 feet, which is not out of scale with a height of an 80-foot bell tower height. It's important to note that the Moscow City Code allows an 80-foot tall telecommunications facility in all zones as a conditional use. The code does not place any restrictions on the height of telecommunications facilities when they are located adjacent to R3 zones, for example. The code only restricts the height of conditional uses when they are near Highway 95 or Highway 8. The City Council, in its legislative capacity, when adopting the code, agreed that the WCF is a permitted use and that 80 feet is the allowable height in all zones. Had the council wished to require a lower height in some zones, it certainly could have, just as it restricted the height of WCFs adjacent to highways 95 and 8. It would therefore be inconsistent with the city's expressed intent in the code to allow the board to deny applicant's CUP application for a WCF which meets the code's permitted height. The board's findings concerning the scale of the WCF are in error and should be reversed. Fourth, the board cites 4 citizen complaints about noise and aesthetics as factors in its denial. However, the decision expressly found in relevant criteria and standards paragraphs 3 and 9 that the proposed use met the noise reduction and aesthetic standards of the zoning code, and that the design of the tower, including the antennas, minimize visual impact of the tower and otherwise comply with the provisions and intent of the code. The staff report specifically noted that if noise becomes a problem, then a decibel reading will be taken at the property line, and staff will take corrective action if the reading is too high. The board's reliance on the generalized complaints of 4 individuals is inconsistent with its own findings in relevant criterion standards, paragraphs 3 and 9, and is inconsistent with the uncontroverted evidence in the record affirming that the facility will meet the noise standards and that the facility is the minimum height necessary to meet AT&T's coverage and capacity objectives.
Board of Adjustment about the potential for other sites than this one being used. For example, the Vista Water Tank, Eastside Marketplace, Brinkriri Park, and some mention of, did anybody even talk to the fairgrounds about this? But why were these other sites not considered as part of this application? It seems like the Nazarene church site was settled upon and no real reason was ever given for why that is the number one choice. Could you explore that a little bit for me, please?
Certainly. Actually, the staff report contains a very detailed discussion, as does our project narrative, of why those particular sites were not available. Some of the sites, for example, one of the water tower sites was too low. It was 30 feet tall, which would not support the coverage aims of AT&T. There were other sites that were ruled out because of lack of availability. The fairground site was discussed extensively at the Board of Adjustment meeting. That site was ruled out. It is too far south. It was outside the search ring. The area, as you saw in the illustration that is to be served, is to the north of this facility. Also, the fairgrounds site that was suggested by one of the board members is zoned residential, and there was discussion by staff and by other board members that because it is zoned residential rather than neighborhood business, that there was a likelihood of equal or greater opposition to that site. The park site was, I believe, ruled out because the city did not wish to have a facility in that site or in that park. Also, Parallel Infrastructure requested that they be able to place a wireless tower in adjacent to one of the water tank sites that the city owns, and that too was denied. I understand that there was also, because one of the water tank sites does not have any sort of structural railing around it to which you would typically attach antennas, and is made of a kind of soft rubbery material, that was proven to be unworkable as a site to attach antennas. So there were reasons for coverage, there were reasons for availability, and there were reasons. There was also discussion at the Board of Adjustment. One board member said that he was sure that there were sites to the north, but there were no sites that were ever identified to the north. And we did an exhaustive search of applicable sites. This has been in process for more than 2 years. And the Parallel Infrastructure team sought out many of the alternative sites that are listed in our narrative. And this is the one site that will work, especially because your code requires that there be room for 3 carriers. And there has to be a separation between each carrier. And that really drives a lot of the height as well. And so I think that there are 2 additional carriers that are looking at this right now. That's also part of the record. And this will mean that if this tower is approved, that those other 2 carriers will not be coming forward to try to build their own site to serve this need. I hope I answered your question.
That answer your question, Art?
Sort of. I would have been happier with a better description of similar to the ovals that were drawn around the Nazarene church site to indicate where the service would be provided. I would have very much liked to have seen similar presentations for the other sites that would indicate why they weren't an option. I did see in the transcript where that was discussed, but discerning what chart went with what bit of discussion and the whys was somewhat opaque to have to read through as to have a presentation on. So it doesn't quite answer my question, but it does help.
Okay, thank you, Art. Other questions for council?
Well, I've got one more.
Okay, Art,
Maybe
continue.
for staff. What was the reason for the denial of the potential for locating a vertical tower, say at the Vista Water Tower, as opposed to attaching antennas to the tank directly?
Amy, you want to take that?
Sure. So it is my understanding that the Vista Water Tower isn't structurally.
No, not the water tower, I realize that, but why not allow a tower on the same site?
Oh, on the same site.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to defer maybe to Gary on the history of that, because I wasn't with the city at that particular time.
Okay, thank you. Gary?
We had looked at both attaching various arrays of antenna around the tank itself, determined that it would have adverse effects on the coating on the inside of the tank. So we were approached a long time ago about putting a tower up adjacent to the tank, but you would have had to have increased height because the height of the tank itself would not allow that separation to allow 3 different carriers on that tower. Unless height were increased more than 80 feet. And it is in the middle of a residential neighborhood as well.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Gina?
I have a couple of questions. I did go through the appeal for the monopine stealth stealth tree, some title like that. I have to say that while I didn't like the tree design, I think this is closer. I think it is a definite improvement. I'm still bothered by the scale. I think that generally consistent doesn't make it harmonious with the surroundings. But I did have a question, and some of the discussion in the previous answer brings up my concern about the generator, the presence of generators, and the maintenance that happens once a week. Does 3 carriers equal 3 generators? And does that mean 3 different times of maintenance? I guess I'm unclear with what the maintenance requirements are.
Is a question we posed to Ms. Allen?
Yes, please. And then if Amy,
Yes.
if you need to clarify, that'd be great, too.
There are currently 2 generators proposed, one for AT&T and one for T-Mobile. Dish is also looking at this facility, but they have not proposed a generator. The generators would be required to be baffled, and they would be in a double-walled container. If there was a problem with noise detected by the neighbors, we would certainly do any kind of remediation to get rid of that problem. It's my understanding that these generators cycle for 15 minutes to an hour once a week as testing, to keep them operational and to make sure that they are functional. And that testing can be scheduled at any time so that it interferes the least with the neighbors. This is certainly one of the areas where a condition of approval can be written that would address all of the concerns surrounding the generators.
Okay, thank you. Gina, does that answer what you wanted to ask?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Maureen,
No, I guess I did have a clarification. I'm sorry, Maureen. Go for it. So your answer, Ms. Allen, to the question is that there is a potential of 3 if Dish or another carrier were to come forward with a proposal to co-locate.
Well, another carrier, if they came forward with a proposal to co-locate, would have to get the appropriate permits from the city as well. And so the city at that time could deal with concerns about an additional generator on the site if they had experienced some issues with that. Certainly we can coordinate the 2 generators to test in the same time frame and to minimize any impacts on the neighbors. Also to make sure that it doesn't exceed the ambient noise level of 45 decibels, which is what's required by your code.
Thank you.
okay, Maureen.
So my question goes again to the issue of scale. And so it has to be 80 feet. And I'm curious on why it can't be 66. Is there something I missed reading in here that told me why we needed that additional 14 feet? Or what was that? I don't quite get it. Why does it have to be 80 feet? Because it seems to me one of the issues they did is the scale. And so could we make it any smaller? Or do you need that size to make sure that there's 3 carriers that could use it?
We actually can't make it smaller or shorter, Counselor. The tower is sized at 80 feet to accommodate, I think, an antenna tip height for AT&T of 75 feet. Their RF justification, which is part of the record, shows that this is the minimum height needed to be able to provide that additional coverage that you saw in yellow on those maps. Also, because 3 carriers need to be accommodated here with separation between their antennas inside of the tower, you have to have it high enough so that those other 2 antenna positions are viable for folks. You do need a certain minimum height to expect that a Verizon or a T-Mobile or a Dish is going to want to or is going to be able to co-locate on that tower from a technical perspective in terms of propagation.
And
so that's why the tower is sized as it is.
And is it correct to assume that the Nazarene Church is fine with this tower going up there?
Yes.
Okay. Brandy?
So I'm just trying to focus on criteria 2 here because that's why the Board of Adjustment denied the request. And so reading through their transcript, some of the comments, I mean, it really had to do with scale and being harmonious with the surrounding character. There were comments that it looked like more of a building than a tower, and someone said a guard tower. I think the efforts to make it fit in with the existing church makes sense. But it does, overall, to me, it looks much larger of a presence than the tree proposal, which we know the history of how that went as well. And one of the other concerns seemed to be because of its location somewhat separated from the church, that made it stand out more than appearing to be a part of the church. That's the feedback I was getting from reading the transcript. So my question is, are there possibilities for it to be looked at a location closer to the church or a more slender tower structure that could still meet your needs?
Thank you, Counselor. I would have to consult with my client to see what those possibilities would be. I think that I'm not sure if the diameter of the tower is designed for the size of the antenna arrays. If there's any additional space there that could be cheated, if you will, to slim the tower down. We certainly are open to any sort of architectural details that are found in the church's design that might be mirrored on the tower to make it look like it's more integrated into the church. And I believe that the tower is positioned where it is on the lot because that's where access to fiber and power are, and I think also access on the site was an issue as well. You know, they still need to use it for the church purposes as well. So, but we could certainly explore that and get back to you if the council wished to continue the hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would be something that could be a consideration for the Board of Adjustment to look at, but I don't, to address their concern about scale. Those were the two things that came up to me. I mean, this is focusing around it not fitting in with the character, and in some of those views, I can see why they came to that conclusion from certain aspects. It appears to not fit in. I think there is some subjectivity to that. I would admit that. But as far as just deciding where to go from here very objectively with the information before us, that's something I would wonder, is that a possibility? As far as a remand for consideration of sizing or location, and if...
Well, Brandy, there's three decisions out of this appeal that can be looked at. One is to sustain the decision by the board in whole, or reverse the decision that the board has brought forward, or remand the matter in whole or in part back to the board. So those are the three options that we have available in front of us.
Alternatively,
Sorry, just to be clear, we would
Yeah.
not be able to continue this appeal to then receive additional evidence. And so if there's additional evidence that the appellant was unable to present or was not available to be presented at the Board of Adjustment, certainly that would be grounds if you feel it's something that could have materially changed the Board of Adjustment's decision, or it's new information that would be material to the Board of Adjustment's decision. You could certainly remand it with instructions as to what additional information you believe, but.
So would that, I mean, does
Well,
this qualify, like with hearing her saying they would be willing to go to the architects and come up with some alternatives for the Board of Adjustment? Was that an example of something that was not available at the time that they considered it that could be then brought forward for further consideration, or is that?
So my review of the record, and please Mike, Amy, if I'm wrong, please step in. But I believe all of these questions, the questions you're asking, this was all ripe for discussion. The Board of Adjustment absolutely knew that they could, put conditions on there. And I believe scale was definitely addressed, and explanation for why it needed to be that size was addressed and is in the record right now. So I'm not sure remanding that. They had that opportunity. Information was presented, and certainly the Board of Adjustment could have addressed the design standards or the aesthetics and chose not to.
Okay, thank you. Art?
Is an extension of that, is the matter of design something that could be handled administratively as part of a development agreement?
That's kind of interesting.
Depending on the council's decision, you can place conditions on it, of course, the conditional use permit application. So if there is something the council would like to see, giving that direction, staff would prepare whatever written decision council would like to consider. And then after that, if there are negotiations that need to occur between staff and the applicant, that could be done, yes. But there needs to be a clear direction and decision given by the council.
Thank you. Ann, did you have a question? Oh, your volume's not on.
I have a question and a comment. So in just thinking about the relevant criteria and standards, one thing I wanted to point out was that it's talked about how this is somewhat in line because of the cross, but to me, I get that that's, technically about 60 feet, but it seems more decorative than structural, and the building itself is closer to 50 feet. And then I also had a question. So since this has come up from the appellant, talking about our role as a legislative body, I'm curious, having seen another proposal come through for this location, how large would a tower need to be to accommodate one carrier, and how large to accommodate two, since that's been a topic of discussion, that's the reason for the scale, which is obviously a part of why it's been rejected.
Ms. Allen?
That's a question for staff.
Oh, that's a question for staff? Okay.
Yep.
Perhaps staff could, Amy, if you could comment on the requirement of co-location.
Yeah, absolutely. In order to erect a new wireless communication facility, part of the standard is that the co-location agreement is entered into by the applicant to accommodate at least 3 carriers. So that is a requirement as far as city code, that they have 3 other, or 3
yeah, and I understand that, and that seems to be somewhat of a point of contention for why the tower is out of scale. I'm curious how large it would need to be if it was just home to 1 carrier or 2 carriers.
I believe, I think it's either 35 or 45.
We've got Bill Belknap that's walked in front of us. Bill, would you like to help out with this, please?
You bet. Just wanted to clarify, so the city code does state that any antenna or tower 80 feet or taller must be designed to accommodate 3 carriers. It also provides that a shorter tower may be approved, but the applicant has to enter into an agreement to swap out the tower to a taller tower to accommodate additional carriers in the future, should they desire to locate at that site. So it's somewhat of a catch-22 in that, the structure of the code is intended to try to minimize the number of towers we have and to try to facilitate and promote co-location, so multiple carriers would be on a single structure and we would have fewer individually serviced towers. And so it's not that it has to meet 3 carriers, but it means if they do not construct a structure of 80 feet that can accommodate 3, they have to agree to swap it out with a taller antenna structure in the future.
Okay.
So technically, having 3 is not actually a requirement. It's just that if you were to do 1, you would have the potential of having to construct something larger in the future.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That answer your question, then?
Yep.
Very good. Sandra, did you have?
Reading through the comments and then spending a lot of time in that neighborhood, I walk through there all the time. I do not see where it meets the criteria for being aesthetically pleasing and in common ground. Sorry, I'm a hands person. In common ground with the neighborhood. It's large. The scale. I thought the renderings on the slides were really telling on what it does look like. It's not just like Ann, I think, said, not just a decorative structure, but It's very large. While I've been around many bell towers, this is gigantic. It doesn't seem to be a bell tower to me. It looks very much like a building, very much like a guard tower. And while coverage is important, I think aesthetics and being pleasing to the entire neighborhood is also very important. And I understand where the Board of Adjustment looked at this and had concerns. I have those very same concerns. So it's not a question. I guess that's just more of a statement. So I was holding back on that because I don't have a question on that. It looks big and tall and bulky and not welcoming to that neighborhood at all. So I understood where they were coming from in their decision.
Well, as usual, I ask for all counselors' input on these things because they're important matters. Maureen, I'll go back to you.
You know, one of my concerns is, will there ever be a tower that's 80 feet tall that will ever be acceptable? That's really my question, because this has, in any neighborhood, will anybody ever accept a tower that is 80 feet tall? And will that ever be consistent with the neighborhood and the climate there? And if it was a little thinner, would it then be acceptable? I'm not sure. I mean, it is going to be big, it's bulky. I don't know if it can be thinner, but I'm beginning to wonder whether or not it's ever going to be possible to have a large tower with 3 units in it. And then in contrast, is it better for us to have 3 multiple ones all running around, you know, like blocks away from each other? And is that going to be aesthetically pleasing to a neighborhood as well?
If I may, I was just going to say that speaks to my question too. I think there's such a significant difference between a 35-foot structure and an 80-foot structure. And that's why I wanted to talk about that a bit too.
But I guess, Ann, I just want to follow up with you on that, because my question with that comes out that says, is it better to have 3 35-foot structures, or is it better to have an 80-foot, or is it better to build a 35-foot structure and then suddenly have to take that down and start and build another one that's larger so that we have them on top of each other and they don't take up as much space? I mean, I think that's the dilemma that I struggle with in this one.
Bill?
I guess potentially a question for the applicant, but I'm not sure 35 feet would get adequate coverage that's desired. And so it wouldn't be one 35-foot tower. It may be multiple to serve the area, since the reach might be reduced. I guess the way the code is currently structured is not in that direction, right? So it's currently structured that it's promoting tall towers that accommodate co-location. And that is essentially the past council policy decision of how to address wireless facilities. Was they didn't want a proliferation of them. They wanted a few that were large enough that multiple carriers could be on. That could be a policy decision for the council, you know, with a future code amendment. But the applicant has applied underneath the code as exists today, and that's what the council needs to evaluate it under.
That part's exactly right, Bill. We have to consider what's in front of us, not what could be in the future, because that was something that will happen if it does in the future, and that's not what we're delegating here and are reviewing, folks. We've got to stick within the confines of what the code does in fact say. Thank you, Bill. Brandy?
Well, and I think also just the process of hearing this appeal is looking at the statements of relevant criteria that explain why they made that decision, and if they could explain their grounds for making that decision, which was number 2, and after all their discussion and debate, they determined it did not fit criteria 2. I don't see, in some way, it's irrelevant what I think if it fits in that character or not. My understanding of this process, because my job is to look at, did they do their due diligence and explain why they came to their conclusion? Is that accurate as far as?
Well, that's a judgment you can make, certainly.
No, I think the answer is it's I'll let legal counsel answer.
Well,
the
I just
question.
mean this
Substantial
process of our job in deciding, do we send it back? Do we accept the decision, or do we remand it? I feel my job is to determine, is there some sort of flaw in the decision-making?
If I may.
Yes,
Bill.
thank you.
So I think it really is focusing on, is the decision supported by facts in the record, right? And the criteria are subjective, and that's clear. But I think what the council's role is to make sure, do they think the decision was well supported by facts that are in the record, that was before the body? The remand is typically if there's additional information that wasn't readily available, that it's in the public interest to develop. Traditionally, that is the remand decision back to let them know that, hey, there's some more information that's come forward that we think needs to be augmented and added to the record that will help support making the appropriate decision. But the others is just take a look at the decision the board made. Was it well reasoned? Was it well supported? Was it supported by facts in the record? And did they follow the criteria that the council's established for making that decision? And that's really the question before the council. You can choose, you could decide that yes, it was well supported by fact in the record and we affirmed the decision. Or the council could decide that no, we don't think it was well supported and reverse the decision, or really anywhere in between on that spectrum.
But for the fact of it is, a remand is not in the works because we don't have information that would change what's in front of us. That's what you just said.
That would be up to council. If you felt there was additional information that needed to be developed and added to the record, you certainly could. That would be before the council. I'm not sure we've heard that here tonight. But that's up to the council to evaluate based on the facts in the record, the written decision by the board, was it well supported and well-reasoned decision? That's really the question for the council.
Art?
Yeah, I was going to say that relative to the previous application, this one I think is much better thought out than a monopole artificial tree. And churches everywhere on or nearby the main building tend to have steeples, bell towers, things like that that are vertically oriented. The robustness of the proposed tower would seem to be in excess of what is needed, given the requirements for that monopole tree, which was relatively small in diameter. And the Nazarene church itself is not an insubstantial edifice. It's big. And my thinking has developed to the point where if that proposed tower could be slimmed down a little bit, put on a bit of a diet, I think it would fit in with the character of the church and the neighborhood. And so I'm finding myself aesthetically leaning into, yeah, I think this could fit in.
Okay.
So that's where I am at the moment.
But that was.
Jana.
Oh, sorry.
I'm struggling more with this application than the last because I thought the tree was just it was a monolith. While this structure is robust and looks a little like a watchtower, it is within the code exactly what we've asked for. And I feel the scale is big. I get it. I do still have concerns about the noise level. But hearing the Ms. Allen's remarks to that and that we could accept this with some conditions on the noise and what needs to be done, I have to admit I'm struggling a little bit with this. For me, it does come down to almost being acceptable as well. So I would lean towards almost reversing the decision.
Okay.
But now, can I ask where you said if it was slimmed down, but that's not what it is right now?
No.
I was
So-
thinking in terms of directing staff during the development process to take that into consideration with the final actual building plans. And that was a possibility, according to staff, as being an option.
Okay, let's ask Bill that. Is that correct, Bill?
My preference would be for the council to establish a specific standard, so that staff is not left to judge
Right.
what is skinny enough. Is it
Well,
a 20%?
it's all the beholder of the eyes of the person, you know? It's kinda
And
like
that's why
losing
I
weight,
really
isn't it,
don't
Bill?
want my staff placed in the position of making kind of a subjective decision about what is skinny enough and what massing makes sense. If the council wanted to say, we would like to see the base of the structure reduced by 20%, we can do that. Or whatever it might be, if you feel that is what makes it more in keeping with the character of the
I
neighborhood.
understand that if I were staff, I would hate to be making that decision as well, but I think it's unrealistic to think that the 6 of us could actually decide it should be 10% smaller. The question I have is can we, under our structure, put a condition on it that we want you to come back to say, can you scale it down, and how far can you scale it down? What I heard Kim say is, tell us what you want us to try and make it be, and we'll do it.
Well,
And
we
so-
know it's going to be 80 feet high.
Oh, I got the 80 feet high. We're talking about fatness now.
So I think now we are, if that is a line of discussion, I don't think that's an appropriate line of discussion at the council level. We don't get into, this is an appeal hearing, I don't think we want to continue it, and any new design will be new information
Right,
into the
that's
record, right?
exactly correct.
So if that is the direction the council would like to go, then I think it's probably something that would be preferable to remand to the board with instruction to the applicant and to the board to look at reducing the horizontal massing of the structure, essentially how thick it is. And I guess, is it, you'd like the bell tower type structure, but you'd like it smaller in width, and then that can give the applicant at least some direction, but it would be best to remand it to the board, for the applicant to respond to that, to come up with a different proposal, to reopen the record, to rehear it with a new proposal, because there'll be new testimony from, the neighborhood, and everybody needs to have an opportunity to comment on this new design, and make sure that goes back through the process. So, if that's the direction the council would like to go, if it's a matter of something the council cannot define this evening as a condition of approval, but you feel should be explored, then I would say that the best action would be for the council to remand it with that specific instruction to the applicant and to the board.
I want a question for me on this, and/or Gary. Your thoughts on what Bill just said?
No, I think what Bill's suggesting is just fine. I think the one thing that that Maureen pointed out is we have to be careful that we're not effectively placing a moratorium on any of the telecommunication facilities and improving the service that they are providing. If you recall, when we had the hearing, we were amending the ordinance, we talked about aesthetics, and we talked about that Ninth Circuit case that came back, and I think that decision was in 2020, where basically the FCC told us that they're, and I'll quote it, I pulled it from when we had that conversation. And it said, we clarify that an effective prohibition occurs where a state or local legal requirement material inhibits a provider's ability to engage in any of a variety of activities related to its provision of a covered service. This test is met not only when filling a coverage gap, but also when densifying a wireless network, introducing new services, or otherwise improving service capabilities. And so going back to Maureen's question, is there ever an 80-foot tower that we would ever approve? I think that's an important question. And so if we're denying on the criteria that it's not harmonious, then we need to describe what it is that's not harmonious. We have to give these providers enough information so that they know what they can then present and request and anticipate what's required, what is harmonious. So when this first came through, they presented a monopine, thinking that was stealth, that's something that would blend, and they were told no, that this is not harmonious. And so then they came back with something that appeared to look like more like the church, and they were told this is better. It ended up being a 3-2 decision. And when asked, what is not in harmony, the answer was that this is more than a tower, it's more of a building, and it appears to stick out and appears taller than other structures, which in the record, we know that this is a conditionally permitted height. And so just things to be mindful of if you are going to remand, in what direction you're going to provide.
Gary?
Yeah, I think Bill's outline, makes a lot of sense. If you're going to set some criteria, if you want it to be a certain size, my concern is the applicant has indicated that she needs to go back, talk to her clients about what is technically feasible as well. So, reduction of 20% of the footprint may not allow it to be used in the manner which it's supposed to be done. So, as you're not being a fact-finding body here, your only option, if you want that answered, would be to remand it.
So And that brings up a good point. I was thinking about that. Maybe this thing has to be that wide in order to suffice for 3 carriers.
And
which
that
is
information
what they
is
have
not
to do.
before the
Yeah,
council.
that's not in front of us, but that, so.
But then maybe it doesn't, so we don't know, right?
Well, it's amazing that wasn't discussed at Board of Adjustment. Gina?
I ask us all to hearken back to the slide that showed the gap in coverage that this is solving. This is our growth future as a community. And I don't love 80-foot tall towers, but we are growing and we need better coverage.
There's the difference right there.
Yes. So I think this is something that we need to embrace. We need these gaps.
Okay, so
Covered.
were you making that a motion? Well,
If Gina doesn't, I would make a motion.
Yeah.
okay, well, Art?
I would make a motion to remand this to the Board of Adjustment with instructions to consider a plan with reduced horizontal area. I think, and, well, I have reasons for that because I think it would work because of the monopole didn't have anywhere near that diameter, so I don't see why physically it couldn't be done. But remand to the Board of Adjustment with an instruction to consider reduction in the horizontal area of the cell phone tower and wait and see if the applicant can fulfill that particular obligation.
Would you consider adding, also considering movement at all to be closer to the church, if that's a possibility? That would.
I think that,
Well, we have a motion
Okay.
for what we heard.
think that would
I have not
extend
heard a
beyond.
second yet. If there is no second, this thing is gonna die. No second, so the motion will not carry.
So I'll make my motion then.
Okay?
Do you want to comment first?
Okay.
Maureen? I move that we reverse the decision of the board and that we accept this.
Okay. Gina's made a motion to reverse the decision and in favor of the appellant. Do I hear a second on that motion?
well, given that the third option is to uphold the board, I'll second Gina's motion.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Gina and a second by Art to reverse the Board of Adjustment's decision and agree with the appellant. Does everybody understand the motion?
Could we have dialogue on, could we have a discussion on it
Sure,
before we-
yep, absolutely.
So my biggest concern is.
Maureen, you need to speak into
Yep,
your.
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'll turn around talking to the people on the bench. Okay. So my concern still is somewhere between Art and Gina, and that is, I think that I think I agree with Gina that a tower needs to go in, it advances the coverage. There was one person who actually testified before the board talking about how he had really terrible coverage, although he didn't have AT&T. But my concern is that if there is a way that it could be thinner, not as broad, then I would be in favor of that. But I think we're kind of stuck with it either way. But the answer is, if we just approve it as it is, then we don't get an answer to the question on, can't you make it a little less broad?
Well, yeah, I think that's kind of what I was going for in the beginning. I think that's a question for the Board of Adjustment. They're the ones that
Right.
decided it was out of character, so would
That was
something
my
else
motion.
not be out of character?
And nobody seconded
That was
it.
my
We were
motion.
pondering.
Yeah, well, we can vote on this and then we
Hang
can-
on a second, we got
Yeah,
Sandra,
yeah.
Sandra's got a discussion point before I will call it to.
So I agree that this is the future. I mean, absolutely, and that we do need better coverage, but I also think we're at that point where we have a chance to really make a difference, where we can make it, we can have help with our carriers to find a way where it is a little more aesthetically pleasing, because yes, we need this, we need coverage, but we don't need to jump at something that we are uncomfortable with, because that just makes it uncomfortable all the way down the line. We have a chance to do the very best we can at this point in this new carrier world that we're in. And I think I had to ponder Art's motion a little bit more. Sorry I couldn't jump on it faster, but I do think it needs to go back because I think, yes, we are closer.
Okay,
And
well-
yes, we need coverage, but
Well,
I don't
is-
want it to go on.
Too
Okay,
quick for
well,
us, Art, too quick for us.
That is clearly not the motion. So what I am going to do is I will go ahead and restate what the motion is. The motion that was made by Gina and seconded by Art was to reverse the decision of the Board of Adjustments and find in favor of the appellant. And I will start the roll with Gina.
Aye.
Ann.
Nay.
I didn't hear you.
Nay. No.
Okay, thank you. Sandra.
No.
Art.
Aye.
Brandy.
No.
Maureen.
No,
Okay, so that motion fails, 4-2.
I would ask Art to reiterate his motion.
Can
Or
I,
you-
Can he do that?
can I do that?
Somebody can, I don't know why.
It would be better coming from somebody else.
That's what I see. How about you, Maureen? You want to make a motion?
Yes, we remand this, the decision for purposes of determining whether or not the structure can horizontally not be as wide. And is there, yeah, that's really what it is.
Okay, so the motion is to remand it to the Board of Adjustments to see if it can be whatever, horizontally or smaller.
Reduced in diameter.
Reduce the diameter, there we go.
Okay, but that's nebulous, guys. What does that mean?
Well, the Board of Adjustment has to decide then if they think it then meets criteria too. If there's a new, if Kim can work with her client and come with a
Well,
different
I've got a
proposal.
motion.
Remands back.
Okay, I was waiting for that because you were gabbling
yeah.
away. I was just about ready to gavel it, ladies and gentlemen. So we've got a motion by Maureen and we've got a second by Sandra to remand this back to the Board of Adjustment. Talking about the horizontal dimension. Does that sound good, Gary? Does that sound like a good
It's
legitimate?
not as exacting, I think, as Mr. Belknap would want.
Yeah, it is difficult guidance to the board that conducted a public hearing, that made a decision, that I don't know that it's 5 feet narrower in the base, that decision, that they will feel that they will make a different decision. And that's, maybe that's okay. We'll
Yeah.
go through the process, and then I just want to make sure that the applicant is not in limbo with application, remand, denial again, appealing again, and we're in this cycle.
I really hear your concern on that, but I don't think that people like myself are really ready to make that decision unless I know that what they have is what you need in order to have 3 carriers using 1 tower. And if I hear that and they come back and said, we need it to be this wide, then that's what they say. If they say no, we could actually take it in somewhat. And if the board comes back and says no, then it's before us again, but we at least have that information. What I'm looking for is the information, can they scale it in any further? Does that make?
And it does. I mean, I don't want to get off in the weeds of new information, but, you know, you can envision a typical stealth monopole that may be 2 feet in diameter that you can get 3 carriers in. So I'm sure there's probably physical possibilities of reducing the size of the structure. I guess the question is, will it be more in keeping in character with the neighborhood? And that's something that the board can certainly explore with the applicant.
And I don't want them to come back with something that's not feasible and that they can't do. So what I'm really looking for is, what is the best that they can do? And maybe they thought this is it, but now at this point is, let's go back and re-examine that. That's what I want.
And I guess in the best is it the smallest diameter?
Small.
Or is it something that looks like a structure, like a bell tower? Like the effort was to try to make it more consistent with the architecture of the church and come with a bell tower.
Right.
If it's the massing of the structure, a standard monopole cell tower will be the smallest thing, but it will very clearly appear like a cell tower.
You know, I think what
You
we're
can make
after
one.
is something of a design similar to what is presented here, but with less mass.
Yes.
And possibly they could look at a round bell tower structure, because I think it's really getting the quadrants, the 3 quadrants they need for that coverage. When you get to a square structure, you kind of have to spread it out a little bit differently. So I just want to make sure we had guidance with the applicant, so they know what the council feels would be more in keeping with the neighborhood, so that we can share that with the board and they can pursue this further.
So the question is maybe mass is our question versus diameter.
Yeah. So something that still, it reflects the design or appearance of the religious facility that's there, but something without that much mass.
I think that'll be helpful guidance for the board, and I appreciate the council's attention.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill. And I think also just from some of the comments on there, I think some of the concern too was that because of that mass and the distance it is from the main structure, it really, in some angles, did not really appear to be a part of the church.
Right.
And that's why I keep bringing up maybe a little, are there any location shifts along with a reduction in mass that could then make it appear to really be a part of that church rather than on a adjacent corner? I know it's on the same campus, but that's what I was reading in some of their conclusion of why it didn't fit in, was that separateness
Well, that ended.
along with the mass.
Well, but the thing of it is, the church was fine with it the way it was. Church didn't
Right.
have a problem with it, Brandy.
No, I know the church didn't. I'm talking about the Board of Adjustment
So,
for their reason for saying it did not meet criteria too.
Okay, so, but I heard kind of a crisscross in there about the church's
I
point of
think
view.
it
The
goes
church
back
was
to
fine with it. You
neighborhood
said something
also.
about-
Yeah, no, I meant the Board of Adjustment and the neighborhood comments were about it
Right.
being kind of separated from it so that it did not appear, and that was
Architecturally integrated
part
with
of
the church itself.
their
Okay.
reasoning for saying it didn't fit in with the character, even though it was designed to look like the church, the proximity didn't quite connect.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second. Everybody understands where we're at with this thing? Ann, I'll start the roll with you.
Aye.
Gina,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Art,
aye.
Brandy,
Aye.
and Maureen.
Aye.
Okay, we'll be reprimanded back to Board of Adjustments when you understand what we're gonna do here, I guess, so.
Correct, and did that include instruction for staff to draft your instructions of remand? So we'll develop a written form of the council's instruction to the board for their consideration.
Yep.
And we can bring that to administrative committee next week.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, with that, we will move on to item number 7, which will be the BBB LLC Development Participation Request. We get a chance to have Bill Belknap here again, so Bill, thank you very much, folks. Thank you, Miss Allen.
Thank you, Amy.
It's gone.
Your Honor, if we may?
Yes.
We did have some people outside that were waiting to get in, but
You want to wait if you want
could
to
we
take a
take a
recess?
5-minute recess?
We'll
and
take a 5-minute
let people-
recess, and we will come back at 8:34, folks. Good evening. We are back from our recess. It is 8:35, and we are on item number 7, which is the BBB LLC Developer Participation Request. Bill Belknap will do the presentation. Bill, you have the podium, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hopefully we'll get this here. Okay, and hopefully you can see that, okay? So to provide a little bit of history on this particular request, shortly it's currently developed on the property north of the river, but the core area that was identified for development playfields was the flat-lying land on the south side of the South Fork. The master plan that was ultimately developed after that effort is shown on the screen here. There were a total of 7 fields. They had 2 Babe Ruth baseball fields, 2 Cal Ripken fields, 3 multi-purpose soccer, football, lacrosse facilities. There was riparian areas along the South Fork, pathways that would be along the river, and the passive park area, which was really identified as an area north of the river, currently occupied by the cyclocross track. And then there were 2 parking lots that were identified for development. One on the east side, there was, I think, 260 parking spaces, and there was a small satellite parking lot on the north side for 50 spaces there. There were a number of elements that were incorporated in considering the development of the property. The first and foremost was providing access to the playfields and to the parking facilities that were intended to serve it. And so that was estimated at that point in time, and this was in 2011, was the extension of Conestoga, which was shown there on the west side of the site, or on the east side of the property, my apologies, was estimated $1.8 million in construction. The council also was concerned about, we'd have frontage improvements along the city's property, so that property does front West Palouse River Drive for quite some distance. And the cost of the city's obligation to make those frontage improvements with future development of the property was estimated $527,000. The council was also concerned about potential traffic impacts on Palouse River Drive to the east of the playfields, as that would be the primary point of access to the property from Highway 95 or South Main. And the cost to improve West Palouse River Drive at that point in time was estimated as $993,000. The council also was concerned about irrigation and potable water use on the facility, so a plan was proposed to pipe effluent from the wastewater reclamation facility through the Arboretum to be able to deliver effluent for irrigation use to the property. That cost was estimated $1.6 million at that time. That was proposed to be funded by the sewer fund. As you're aware, we are trying to develop a plan to address our temperature discharge standard, and land application, especially during the warmer months of the year, is one way in which we could address that as compared to maybe doing chilling towers or other improvements at the treatment facility. So that was $1.6 million in cost. The development of the ball fields themselves, of the 7.6 was only $2.5 million. To develop the 7 fields that were identified. And then we had the passive park area on the north side of the river, and that was estimated $210,000, primarily pathway construction and other improvements in that area. So the total project cost, including the effluent irrigation, was estimated just right under $7.7 million at that time. And so these are just highlights. It's kind of hard even to see in the slide, but highlighting the area, the Conestoga extension, as I mentioned, the frontage improvements for the park along West Palouse River Drive, the improvements on Palouse River Drive out to South Main 95, that effluent line coming down through the Arboretum, and ultimately the playfields themselves, and the passive park area on the north side of the river. The council discussed various ways to fund the project, including general obligation bond measures. Obviously, there was funding that time available from the Hamilton Fund. The sewer fund, again, to address the effluent component, and certainly looking at grants and donations or any other kind of in-kind contributions for development of the facilities were explored. And the council did look at kind of what would be the tax burden if the council were to pursue a general obligation bond measure at that point in time. So for the 6.25 if you assume the sewer fund was paying for the effluent service. The remaining cost for the project would be just over $6.25 million. And at this point in time, for a $200,000 valued home, it was estimated about $50 a year, or just under $5 per month for that measure. In 2011, City Council ultimately decided the project was cost prohibitive at that time. And there was a lot of discussion about working with the property owner to the south, sharing some of the costs of the road, but ultimately the council didn't feel, and this was only 3 years after the recession of 07 and 08, felt that it really was cost prohibitive, and the city was probably unlikely to pass a general obligation bond election of that scale. So the city council directs staff to re-engage with the Moscow School District and to further explore the Joseph Street property, which had lower development costs at that time. So we were able to successfully partner with the school district. That facility was developed at just about $3.5 million, which was largely equally shared between the school district and the city of Moscow to develop that facility, and that was completed in 2016. Those that kind of run the athletics circles understood that the facility was not likely to meet the Moscow School District property was substantially smaller. What we developed was about 16 acres of that facility, that it would likely not meet the long-term community needs for athletic and playfield facilities. And so the council retained the property for future playfield development as the community may need it. On April 8th, the city received a request from BBC LLC, that is the owner of the 232 acres directly adjacent to the property adjacent to the city's ball field property and to the south, requesting that the city share in the financial participation for the construction of that Conestoga extension. The total cost in current cost for that roadway, as well as the bridge that would cross the South Fork to provide access to the south side of the river, is estimated about just under 2.4 million, so about 2.37. And that includes the bridge construction, the roadway improvements, and water and sewer and utility extensions. While the letter wasn't really explicitly clear, what we understood from conversations was they were hoping the city would share that cost equally, and splitting that cost roughly in half. As it involves both roadway construction, sewer mains, and water main construction, the bulk of that cost would be for street roadway construction at about $941,000. The water fund contribution for water main extensions would be about $90,000, and sewer fund contribution for the sewer mains would be about $47,000. The developer is likely to need to construct a lift station to service their property. They're slightly downstream of the south lift station, located near the Fountain Industrial Park. So they would be proposing to construct a lift station, and that would provide sanitary sewer service then to the city's property for future restroom or other facilities that the city may wish to construct on the property. That's not included in the request before you today. That'll be a cost that the developer would have to bear. The City Council had fairly extensive discussions about the extension of Conestoga. It went to the Transportation Commission in 2007, and there was a debate about whether the city should hold itself to the same standard that it holds private developers to. That is, if the city were to develop its playfield property, it should extend roadways and utilities to the end of our property so the city can grow in a logical and orderly fashion. And ultimately, the City Council did decide that was what the standard the city should hold itself to, and the Transportation Commission made that recommendation as well. That extension and access certainly is a fundamental part for us to begin the planning for the development of those playfields that have been somewhat placed on hold due to that large upfront cost hurdle to gain access to the property to begin to advance it toward development as needed. We have, as staff, examined our accumulations in the capital fund. We do have a number of other large projects we're hoping to get to construction this year. We have the 3rd Street LSIP project, which will be a large one, the 6th Street Bridge replacement, as well as Mountain View. So we do have a large number of transportation projects advancing this year. It does appear with just a little bit over 526,000 additional allocation, and that is kind of a reallocation of existing capital accumulation, that we would be able to meet the request that the council wished to do so, as well as fund all of our planned projects and those that we have within the next 10-year capital improvement plan. If the council wishes to entertain the contribution, it would be staff's recommendation to make a condition that the developer improve Palouse River Drive from that intersection of Conestoga eastward to the highway. That will again get it to develop to a minimum of 34 feet in width with curbing and continuous sidewalk on the south side of the roadway. There is some current development proposed on the north side that will finish out improvements on that side of the roadway, and we'll get that nearly to full completion out to South Main. Those improvements would help accommodate additional traffic volumes that we would expect both from any residential development that may happen south of the ball field property, but also our development at some point in the future, and help reduce our overall development costs for the playfield project. Staff would also recommend that if the council wished to make that contribution, that the city's contribution would be no more than 50% of the actual cost of construction. All we have really are estimates at this point in time, but that any contribution shall not exceed a total amount of $1,078,210, which is the cost of construction in the estimate less the contingency that they had included. And that any financial contribution would not be dispersed until completion and acceptance of the Conestoga extension, the bridge, as well as the improvements to West Palouse River Drive. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. We also have representatives from BB's LLC here as well to try to answer any questions you might have.
And this was heard in front of Public Works and Finance on April 26th with a recommendation for approval. Is that correct, Bill?
That's correct.
Okay.
I have a very quick
Brandy.
question. Thank you. What was the amount that it was projected to be those improvements on West Palouse River Drive 1095 quite a few years back?
Full improvements on both sides of the roadway was about, what did it say, 880,000?
So, yeah. So,
993,000.
and that was in 2011?
That was in 2011. That was both sides of the roadway.
You're talking about the
Okay.
north and south side. We're talking about
Correct.
the south
Okay,
side.
so what you are what staff is recommending as a condition is not that. It's only part of that project.
It'd be about $500,000, correct.
Okay. Questions for Bill?
Okay, I have another question.
Okay, go
All
ahead,
right.
Brandy. You got the floor.
So this, again, goes to the roadway improvements and in there, saying it's anticipating kind of an increase in traffic there, bringing it up to a minor arterial standard. What about expectations of what's going to happen to Conestoga Road traffic?
To the north of Palouse River Drive?
Yes, so when Conestoga goes through, what about people, say, traveling west, who may know that they can get through more quickly going that way than going Palouse River Drive to 95, to the couplet, to Washington, to 3rd?
So you're talking going Sand Road taking a left-hand turn to
Heading
head west?
directly north on Conestoga,
Conestoga.
existing Conestoga, through the neighborhood. You can wind through there and cut through campus.
That'll
And
drive you nuts if you ever try to do it.
You can. It's not a very direct route. And to be honest,
Yeah.
to full disclosure, my mom lives on Conestoga.
I used to live on Conestoga, so I know it quite well. I know exactly
It's,
how to cut through there.
I don't know that you're likely to see, so what's also the council will see shortly is a subdivision plat that will extend Sunnyside down.
Okay,
So Sunnyside is coming
Yep.
down from above. That would be a much more direct route to make it up to Ridge Road and Walenta if you want to go down to Taylor. But currently, that's a very circuitous, up the hill, down the dip, up the corner, around. It's not a very direct route.
I agree. I actually think the best route would be to take that Palouse River, go north on 95, but then cut across by the A&W. So I don't know what's going to do to that road. But I guess at this point, we're just anticipating the increased traffic load on that stretch
That
of
really
Palouse
has
River
nothing to
Drive.
do with what we're talking about on this, does it?
Well, the reason it is the reason I'm asking the question is we're anticipating needing some improvements on that stretch of road because of additional traffic. But that's the section that we're expecting that on and haven't looked at
Correct.
possible
That's where we
other
expect to
areas
see
where
the
we would have-
majority of the traffic utilized,
Okay.
correct.
So, just a comment from my perspective is that having someone willing to cooperate on improvements to that stretch of Palouse River Drive is very advantageous to the city because it deals with taking care of issues that we're still confronting on Mountain View and have for the past 30 years, where we inherited a county road, the city built up around it, and now we're trying to remedy this county road and turn it into an urban collector street, arterial street. And by doing this, before the development really gets going, we get ahead of that issue and really assist in traffic flow through that section of town without having to go back and try to fix it later at greater expense. So I think this is a very advantageous proposal and that we should take advantage of it.
Thank you, Art. Gina, I'm going to go to Gina and let her speak.
I happen to concur with Councilman
Excuse-
Bedke's.
Excuse me one second, Gina. Art,
Sure.
Could you bring this down so we can see Ann? I can't see Ann.
Oh, I apologize.
Oh, good idea.
Yes,
Ann,
certainly.
sorry about leaving you here.
Yeah.
Good.
You still with her? There she is. I want to see her smiling face and make sure she's listening. Okay, now Gina.
I happen to concur with Art. I do have a question, though. We did get some feedback from the community about this money being dedicated towards this project and how the rest of the community was potentially going to have terrible streets forever and ever and ever and things like that. Can you help put balm on my injured soul about the fact that the roads aren't going to go, and I'm being a little facetious about it, but I just,
Sure.
you said we could still carry through with all of the projects that we had planned for this year, and will it negatively impact our street improvements?
I mean, it certainly will have a slight reduction of funding that we would have available to make improvements in other locations. I think that is true.
But not down to zero.
Correct. No, all of our planned capital improvements that we had already planned for and programmed, we can still accomplish and accommodate. So everything, the surface treatment program, scaling up,
Slurry
everything that
seals.
we have in the CIP, we still will be able to continue to fund. We had the benefit of having some unanticipated fund balance last year that we actually put into the general fund accumulation, and that can be utilized as helping make up the gap for this additional participation if the council wishes to do so.
Gary, you
Certainly,
had
there are other locations. Oh,
Gary, you
sorry.
had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that this is not uncommon. Opportunities present themselves.
Indeed.
One of the best, I guess, examples is when we completed Railroad Street. It was one of those where we didn't have enough money to do it to the level that the council wanted to do it. We then gathered accumulations that we'd made for Mountain View Road, some from A Street, in order to bring them to that project. Then we reallocated and built money up to do the rest. So this is very common in the capital improvement world, and
And
we've
it
done
is-
it numerous times.
And if you saw the memo, we are actually reallocating a fair amount of money from the parks capital accumulation because this is toward a park development.
Yeah.
And so it's not all coming from street accumulation. We'd be proposing to utilize some park capital accumulation for this as well.
Well, I think it's an excellent example of our recognition of the fact that nobody ever has all the resources they need, and if we pool our resources and work together cooperatively, it works really well. So I appreciate you helping me get over my worries. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Brandy, and I'll come back to you.
What is the expected timeline for when the city wants to develop the city-owned land? Because I know it's not in the capital improvement plan. So how long are we thinking it will be before we do something?
So it's not been in the capital improvement plan partially because of all the substantial costs that we needed to gain access to the property. And so we were working on other undeveloped parks that we had access to do restroom, playground installations, and we're coming to completion with those that are currently in the inventory. And so if the council chooses to participate, if access is now available to that park, we can then begin to look at updating the capital improvement plan and see when we can program that in, look for grant opportunities. I would say it's going to be within that 7 to 10 year time period before we actually would have accumulations to do development. I started on some draft CIP planning for 2028 as being potentially when we could accumulate enough funding, and especially if we approach the playfield development in a more phased fashion than we did, Joseph. Maybe it's 2 fields at a time. We work on adding the parking lot over time as is needed for the facility, but potentially we take a more measured approach. We may not have all the money to do all the field development at one point in time, but we may look at different phases of that project.
However, it's the start of the process.
Right.
Without doing this, you don't have the start of the process. I'm going to go to Ann, because I seen her had her hand up just a minute, and I'll come back to you, Sandra. Ann?
Yeah, I had a question occur to me between the P&Z meeting and today. So, I mean, the answer might be really obvious, just it's half, and so it's fair. But I was curious how we landed on 50% for the reimbursement, especially because they didn't specify an amount in the request.
That was what they requested orally in discussions. Certainly, that is up to the council to decide what level or if you'd wish to participate.
Was I incorrect then? Was that included in the official request that came to us?
They did not specify a percentage. You're correct.
Okay, so just early on in the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra?
Yeah, and I don't mean to have this come out of left field, but looking at the future and down the line, I mean, is it set in stone that we are putting ball fields in there, or do we have wiggle room to put something else there? And if we have wiggle room and want to do something else, is this still absolutely necessary to do at this time?
So the council has full discretion to decide how you'd wish to use the property. The acquired it, I don't know if we used Hamilton funds to acquire the property, so it doesn't have that restriction.
No, we did not.
And so, I mean, certainly the council has the discretion to determine how you would wish to develop or utilize the property, certainly with the Parks and Recreation Department and Commission's input into what they feel is necessary. If you talk with Greg Morrison, if I had 7 more fields today, I would have them full all day long.
Sure.
That there's never enough, and he has lacrosse pressing next to soccer, which is people throwing a hard ball at head level and other people looking at their feet. And so certainly there's, depending upon who you speak to, there's a, Greg would say there's a demand for additional facilities, and as the community grows, that will continue to be there. But certainly the council could revisit the topic, could re-engage with the Parks and Recreation Commission, could decide that a different use is more appropriate for the property. It's just, that's what it was acquired for. We knew Joseph, as being a school district-owned property, was probably not going to meet the long-term playfield needs, and you don't come across flat property of that size very readily. And so that's where we've held it for. But the council certainly has that discretion. If you decide you feel that it's more appropriate to use it for a different use, that would be a discussion for the council.
I want to say something. You made a comment about Greg Morrison, and now, ladies and gentlemen, I've been a baseball guy in this community for over 30 years. I coached a number of years. I was on the Moscow Baseball Association. We didn't have a damn field for these kids to play in back in those days. I'm just being blunt. And so I look forward to the day that we have more fields for these kids and doing different activities. I'm talking about both the boys and the girls. And so in my view, you can never have enough of these things. So on Greg Morrison's behalf, I support his willingness to say that, because he's been a baseball guy for years too. So now we do have a nice facility, there's no doubt about it, but as we move along and this community grows over the next 10, 20 years, we're going to need more of those types of things. Maybe not exactly like it was presented in Bill's presentation. However, it gives us some options, and it gives us some options to do those things. Maybe you do something different with Gormley fields and stuff. There's all kinds of different things we can do. So just thought I'd throw that out there. It has nothing to do with this, but I thought I wanted to take a few minutes and put a hand in there for baseball. So there you have it. Gina.
Speaking with my day hat on, I believe that it is economically smart for us to take advantage of infrastructure improvements, because we are growing and we need these kind of things to come across our plate. We need these kind of great moments where we can invest a relatively small amount to have such huge improvements. So I just am very much in favor of this request.
Maureen.
I have a historical question. And I wasn't on council when all this was happening, but my recollection in the paper was that it was the neighborhood that put out a lot of objection to the idea of ball fields being located there due to noise and lighting and the rest of that. Am I mistaken?
No, there was a point in time that was fairly contentious.
Yeah.
They kind of reformulated the fields planning group to include neighborhood members, kind of came up with a revised plan, put the parking lot on the other side of the river is kind of what the neighbors wanted to move that activity farther away. And so, while probably didn't fully address all the concerns from members there, that wasn't, I think cost was the primary concern. Gary was more directly involved in that at that point in time. But I think that ultimately was the reason why the council chose not to pursue it and to move to Joseph. I think they worked through a lot of the neighborhood concerns and questions later in the development process before the council made the decision not to pursue it, and Gary could probably share on that.
Yeah, I think Bill's explanation is right on. You saw the giant number that was up there, 7.6 million, which in those days, coming off the recession, there was no way that the council was going to put that before the voters for a GO bond election. So at that point, it was decided to kind of mothball the project. There were some discussions about, do we still want to use it for ball fields and those sorts of things? Council just decided, let's just leave it alone. We're not going to get rid of it or anything like that. In this situation, the opportunity to partner, and when we were looking at development back in 2011, we actively approached the property owners to the south to see if they would partner with us. Because the reason was, obviously, they needed access, we needed access, it just made sense to put it together. It was also a big discussion about, we need to get Palouse River Drive. If we're going to have kids that are going to be using that field, there will be some increased traffic, obviously, so it has to be improved. So that added that additional, 1.6 million onto, no, it was 900 and some odd thousand. At any rate, so this addresses all of those issues, and for quite a savings, I guess, if you'd call it that. So I see it as an opportunity that you could go out, have access to the property. Council can decide if you want to use it for something else, you could certainly do that, but it gives you a lot more options than you have now.
Well, in addition to that, you got a nice park area in the south end of town with, as things go, I mean, what a better place to have it right out there.
Anderson Frontier Park is the only recreational facility in that sector of the city.
Yep.
And we have a similar contribution they'll be doing programmed in the CIP for next year, which is our share of roadway improvement cost for Mosier Park. So we have $330,000 that we have to contribute for the construction of 3rd Street on the frontage of Mosier Park. So this is kind of a very similar situation.
Randy.
So, I also see this as a great opportunity for long-term cost savings. I mean, we're talking a ways out, so it's important that it's clear that, we're investing this money now, and it's not going to directly benefit the city for quite a while, but it makes sense thinking of long-term planning. I also see it as it could be an even better opportunity, meaning, I see the letter from Rich Beebe about the goal with some increased availability of affordable housing through an agreement with the Moscow Affordable Housing Trust. And we've been hearing about this as a great goal of this development. It's something we've all talked about. We funded a big study for PEP to do this affordable housing. We know it's a big issue. It's now on our major challenge area. We all recognize that we don't have many tools for doing anything about affordable housing. Regulations, there's not much we can do with that. What we also have many discussions about is what we need to do is incentivize developers. Here we are with some developers that actually want to do that. Here we are with them asking for us to participate to the tune of $1.2 million. Can we put in some, what is this affordable housing? Like a percentage, tie a percentage of, we participate, we can incentivize you by participating in this.
Right.
And give us X amount of affordable housing, and the more affordable housing, the more we participate.
Well, what we're doing tonight has nothing really to do with that. We're kind of off the beaten path. I appreciate the fact that you brought that up, Brandy, and you're absolutely right. We've got a developer that wants to help us out with this. as a portion and is saving the city and our taxpayers a lot of money for the very thing that we're trying to accomplish. So, but with that, I'm going to go to Gina.
Will you put that final staff recommendation back up there, please? So that I can, and don't lose Ann's face, though.
I will not.
I want to keep Ann's face.
Well, she won't be able
Please.
to see it if I don't share my screen is the only issue.
I'll just add on while you're looking for it too, that I think this is the time that we could say, come back to us with some options for what that could look like as a part of the participation, the same way you have recommended the city staff has recommended the Palouse River Drive improvements. Have you found what you needed?
So I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, Gina.
So I move that we financially contribute no more than 50% of the actual cost of construction, not to exceed that number that you show right there, $1,078,210, and that we don't disperse it until completion and the city acceptance of the Conestoga Extension Bridge and improvements to West Palouse River Drive.
If I may, I guess I
Gonna
would.
kill our motion.
What's that?
You're going to kill our motion if we don't get a second.
Well, I'll second it, but
Okay, now
I
we'll
don't
go
think
to,
we need it.
now we'll go to Gary.
Well, I think what we would prefer is that give staff direction to move forward with meeting with the developer to strike an agreement that has those parameters on it and bring that back to city council.
Okay,
Yes.
in his language, I would like you to do this, please. So we would direct staff to meet with the developer and move forward with an agreement that has these parameters, please.
Yes.
Is that okay with the seconder, Art?
Yes, it absolutely is.
Okay, so let me see
I
if
knew
I've
what
got
Gary's
this.
going to say.
So the motion that Gina made and Art saying was to direct staff to move forward with the developer to get the criteria and the dollar amount. Is that correct, Gary?
Yes.
That we said, everybody clear on that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's
Before
get
we go,
let's get Ann's face on here again. I
Yep, I
want to
think
see
she had a
Ann.
question too.
Ann's,
I just wanted to follow Brandy's line of thinking through and for discussion. I'm interested in that possibility too and what that looks like. I think it's actually very pertinent to the discussion we're having tonight in talking about how we don't have a lot of tools and what the incentive might look like and that we're not under any obligation. I support the proposal. I supported it during the committee, but I'm curious to have that conversation and see how each of the counselors feel as well. And I feel like I want to make sure that we have space for that tonight.
well, and I'm certain that we're going to have more conversation on it, ladies and gentlemen, as we move forward.
So can I ask
I
you a
think it's-
question, Bill, on your statement on that?
Yes.
So, I mean, I absolutely agree, we will have chance to discuss this further, but I'm kind of in a limbo area. So isn't this a good time to also say, can we direct staff to look at opportunities to find those chances to work with a developer who's been great to work with so far, right? And be like, can we come up with what we think affordable housing is and hit that? And can we look at, I mean, our climate has been a huge issue, and look at ways to make sure we're using our aquifer correctly, or maybe building on that and put those incentives in with all of this? Doesn't it make sense to do that now rather than to do it in steps?
Well, I think it really muddies the water with what we're trying to do with this motion. I would say no on that. It's a good idea, and
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree
Yeah.
with this conversation. I don't think we have done the research, though, to enter into a fairly complex set of, affordable housing tools and aquifer concerns in one night in a discussion about
That's why I think
whether
we
or
need
not.
more
So
time
I do
before
think that
approving
we
this.
need to have the conversation, but I don't think it's now.
I just don't see what the sense of urgency would be. I mean, this is a
hang on a
Sorry,
second,
go
Ann.
ahead,
Maureen's
Maureen.
got the floor. Maureen?
I guess I have to agree with Sandra and with Ann and Brandy on this issue because it was raised specifically in the April 8th letter where it said specifically affordable housing agreements. And I guess what I want to do is let's also get a sense while we're in the negotiations and while we're talking about this. I don't think anybody here is opposed per se to the bridge, but it's can we get some more details on what that means? And now seems to me to, instead of compartmentalizing it, here's this and here's this, it's kind of like, let's talk about it as a whole, and that would benefit everybody across the board. And I think that unless there's this immediate thing that says, we need to make a decision tonight because we have to have a bridge in 3 weeks, I think, can't we delay that a little bit and ask for more specific information on affordable housing and climate issues?
Well, we have a motion and we have a second, so we're going to go with the motion, but Art?
Yeah, I was just going to comment that I think the sequencing of the discussion is very important here, and I think any discussion of provision of affordable housing and negotiations with the developer should come along later on during the platting phase and not be associated with what we're talking about now, which is the opportunity to improve Palouse River Drive through participatory agreements with the developer. I think it's premature to be discussing that. I know we all have it in our minds and would like to do it, but in terms of where it's most appropriate, I think further down the line, after the plans are more clearly defined and staff has a chance to work with the developer, because the staff knows we're interested in this stuff, and I think it's just pure premature to be discussing those parts along with this discussion. It's outside the realms of what we need to be considering tonight.
Did Ann, you get your point in? Did you want?
Maureen captured it largely, but I mean, we're talking about over $1 million, and I don't see the sense of urgency in not wanting to have the discussion. And I think that there's a time point before we've allocated $1 million and a time after in which we're not going to have any kind of incentivizing tools. And we've talked again quite a bit about how limited we are. So, I mean, I plan to vote no and would like the opportunity to talk about this further for the reasons that we've outlined tonight.
Brandy?
So, yeah, and I would say, I mean, I think the idea is take some time. There's the subgroup that's looking at, that came from PEP about this affordable housing. What are the options? Here's an option. We have a developer that has that same goal. And this is the time. I mean, I know we don't have the answers right now, so it would be a matter of, okay, can you take the time you need, come back with what could that look like? What could that participation look like, where we can be assured that there will be some amount of affordable housing that comes out of this, because that will benefit all of Moscow. It's a public benefit.
We're talking about a highway right now and road improvements. We aren't
Yeah,
talking about
this isn't-
affordable housing.
Right,
But it's like the URA, which we've been on for a long time. That infrastructure, participation in infrastructure, is a tool you have for incentivizing to get what.
So if I might
Yes.
share,
Please.
Go ahead,
Your Honor.
Bill. I'm just writing some notes as
yes.
we're talking here.
So the reason why, or maybe potentially part of the reason why affordable housing is mentioned in the request is because we did know that was a desire and interest and concern of the council. The developer has engaged in conversations with Moscow Affordable Housing Trust on partnering on a project, and they've identified a parcel of land that would be sold, could be sold to the trust at below market rate to try to help facilitate their development of further affordable housing. Is approximately 2.5 to 3 acre parcel of their property that could be used for that purpose. If the council wishes to formalize that as part of this contribution, we can certainly work with the developer to do so. I would caution entangling that discussion on a future land use entitlement.
Bill, with that being said, this is a process where it'll go through several different steps of things. This is step one in a bunch of different steps that's going to go forward. And with the land use that you just described, you're absolutely correct. You try to bring this whole thing and try to eat an elephant one night, you're going to have a mess. Folks know the direction that everybody in this city would like to go with fair and affordable housing, including this council. We've talked about it. It's one of the goals, one of the priorities that we've had as a council, and it's something we've talked about for a long time. And this, to what Art's point is, you're doing road improvement, you're doing improvement right up to city property as well, which we do not have now. The improvement beyond that has not happened yet. And that's going to be another issue coming in front of us. So everybody has had their say on that, and so folks are going to know where it sits.
Yeah.
And so what I would suggest is we've got a motion in front of us to direct staff to work with the developer on the development agreement with this process on the road and the bridge. and now is the time to vote on that.
Can I just ask a clarification? I think I misunderstood you, and I just want to make sure, did you say that we're not clear on the road improvements down Palouse River Drive, or we are clear on what those are going to be? Did
No,
they-
we are clear. It's the
Okay,
south
I just
side.
wanted to make sure I heard
Yep.
that.
Yeah, what we're talking about is the road improvements on Palouse River Drive, the south side of it, that north, or south Conestoga to that bridge. That's what we're talking about, and through the end of the bridge. That's all we're talking about.
So if I could say, I do support participating in this, but I want to know, I want to see, can we incentivize to assure that one of these small little chances we get, and maybe you come back and talking with these groups and they say we don't have any ideas for how you could do that, or there's no possibility. But I would like to, as part of the participation, explore the same way we are asking for those improvements. Can we have a certain amount of affordable housing that we will be assured is a part of this?
I think that the time for that conversation is down the road a ways, not right now, because right now it gets too far into the weeds of the true issue. And I don't honestly, as an economic development professional, do not think we are ready as a council to start talking about this yet.
Well, I guess the reason I do think it's important now is the $1.2 million is the incentive. Once you've given it, then what incentive is there with platting? I mean, what we've
There's
talked about,
plenty
it's
of
not much
incentive.
incentive to say, oh, waive hookup fees. We all know that's not enough to make any difference to a developer.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've got a motion, and I think that the discussion has been pretty thorough, and I think we need to move on this motion and see what happens. Everybody in agreement?
Yes.
Ann, I'll start with you.
Nay.
Gina,
Aye.
Sandra,
Nay.
Art,
Aye.
Brandy,
Nay.
Maureen.
Nay.
Okay, so, it doesn't pass, and that's the end of that, so.
Well, I can make
Now
a
we
different
don't have
motion
any
now, right?
we
I
have
can make
no
a different motion.
Gary?
It would be possible if somebody wanted to make a motion along the
Ew.
same lines and then to include some negotiation, if you will, with the developer on a affordable housing proposal.
That's what I would think, like my motion would be to, or direct staff to engage again with the developer or with Moscow Affordable Housing Trust, have those conversations and see, are there some options that you would recommend, that staff would recommend after those discussions that could be included?
Are you making
As
a
a
motion,
condition
Brandy?
for this.
Are you making a motion?
How would you include affordable housing in a road improvement project?
Say we will participate in that road
you
improvement
do.
project if 25%, 10%. I don't know what that would be because I don't have that information.
But
That's what I'm,
what if it's just a road improvement? What if the project is only a road improvement? So I think that we're
well, I
getting in
guess
the
I'm-
weeds here.
I don't, why would it be,
Okay,
you mean just a road improvement with no development?
This is a road improvement, and this is all we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, but it's for the purpose of a development. That's the interest of the developers, to access their development.
Including the city with access to the park?
Yes, and that's why I'm interested in participating.
Yeah, so why don't we just do
Okay.
that?
Let me just add one thing. I guess my sense is, Brandy, let me just understand this. It seems to me that what you're looking for is some specificity here where they're saying the benefit is that there's going to be increased access, increased availability of housing in Moscow. And so the question is, what does that mean? Because it was brought up in the letter in front of us that said increased housing and promote sustainable smart growth. It's just a matter of, can you get some specificity on what that means? Or have negotiations and dialogues on it, go for it.
And I guess the concern, what I would caution is the unique circumstance here. The only reason that the city is entertaining the idea of participating is because it involves our property and provides access for our development. The concern of heading down the road of paying for improvements in exchange for housing. We have 10 subdivisions that'll be coming before the council in the next year. Any one of those can make that case, and generally we do not participate in those improvements. We would not, but for the fact that this crosses our property, grants us access, and moves us closer to development of our own property. And so that is really the rationale and the justification for our participation in this case. If we start tying housing to it, I guess the concern is then that opens the door for any other private developer to ask the city to offset because it's viewed as being providing more access to housing or potentially reducing the cost of housing, because if their infrastructure cost is less, then they have less cost to pass on to the buyer. So it's just, we want to be, I guess, clear in what the city is doing here, that is partnering, providing access to our property and only for that purpose. We did articulate concerns about affordable housing. I think they responded to that in the request, but I want to, we really, I think, need to make sure that we're clear about the reason why the city is participating in this fashion, and it's about the ownership of the property and access to our property.
So
Ann has her hand up. Ann?
I just wanted to respond to that, and I think in terms of considering that as a risk, I don't really see that as a big problem. I mean, you could always come forward and we could always just say no. I don't see that being having a huge impact on city operations or future requests. I understand the point is heard, but that's my thought on it.
Mr. Mayor.
Gina?
So for the last year and a half, I've been sitting with the housing leadership team, which includes developer, when I can get him to come to the meeting. And we've talked him off of a big ledge of the city is so hard to deal with all of their rules and regulations, and that they don't even want to come to the table to develop here. And while incentives are very important, I would caution us from putting yet another perceived, even if it's not, but a perceived regulation or requirement onto developers at this point. We are not ready to do this, guys. And I understand, I support affordable housing and sustainability practices as well. But this is not the time to link these two.
I understand what you're saying. But to me, the reason this is not a regulation, this is an incentive. It's not a requirement. It's just an incentive for us to participate. It's a request. They're requesting our participation, our contribution of $1.2 million. It's not us putting a regulation, you must do this. It's saying, let's do that. And as another condition, let's get something more out. Let's see if we can get something more out of it that works for both parties and that works for all of Moscow and helps all of us and helps address this issue that we have such limited tools, and especially when it's a developer who also has that as a goal. Why not explore that?
I hear you completely.
The staff and the way this is working, very clear, very separate, and very compartmentalized at this stage of the development process.
Can I ask you a question on that, Art? My question on that is, do we ever, when someone lays out their plat, ever have a chance to say, we want more affordable housing in there? Do we have a chance of ever doing that?
We don't.
No, we don't. And so I guess my question is, I mean, you say that's the time to talk about it, but we don't actually have any time to actually input on that.
Maureen, I'll say something about affordable housing. When I ran for mayor 8 years ago, somebody asked that question to me in front of the League of Women Voters, and I said, you want fair and affordable housing? Build about 400 units, and you'd have some cheap housing, because the market will carry whatever it's paying for. This market is just absolutely nuts in housing right now, and the way you're going to get it, and you're going to make it happen and save the availability of it being a possible thing, which we do not have right here in Moscow right now. And so, yeah, all of us would love to see a fair and affordable housing, or fair housing, or affordable housing. But there's a lot more into it and why it's driving the price of housing up. One of them is the fact that you're at a zero interest rate. All you need is a 3% down. Now, I can give you a lecture all day long. I was talking to Gary Reading about this in my office. With this CARES Act that went through, with a family of 3 people got $8,900 this year. If you wanted to buy a $300,000 loan, all you need is 3%. That's $9,000. It gets you right into something, and that's driving the prices of all kinds of things up. You can just read it anywhere. So, with $500,000, you're looking at $15,000. at a real cheap interest. Now, the thing of it is, what I'm saying about this is that's part of the reason, and it's not just an issue here in Moscow, Idaho, ladies and gentlemen, it is everywhere. You can go to Orfino and run into these kinds of problems.
Indeed.
And all over the place. Dairy, I don't care where you're at. It is an issue that we need to figure out. Now, also, when I made that statement about building 400 houses, I got chastised about, oh my God, our aquifer, we're going to run out of water. Well, let's get the damn aquifer fixed. We've been talking about that for 30 years, for crying out loud. Let's recharge it. We know it's partially recharged. We've got all kinds of things that we need to look at for infrastructure and moving our community forward. And this is the fastest growing state in the nation, and yes, it's going to continue to grow. The pressure is going to be on there. So there are some things that we need to open up, but we can do it in a sustainable way where we talk about it and make it happen. These developers are getting the idea of what we need for a number of houses and things going on. So
I was going to make one other comment, that if we walk away from this deal, there's nothing restraining the developer from saying, okay, fine, nothing for Palouse River Drive. We're going to put another road in to US 95 on the south end of our property and develop from the north side working back in. Screw you all, and we miss an entire opportunity to develop West Palouse River Drive.
For $500,000. Right? That's about what you
No,
said the West Palouse
1.2.
River Drive would be?
I think that's what their estimate was, about 550,000.
Yeah.
Correct.
I thought it was 930 for us to develop the whole thing.
Both sides, correct.
Right.
That was the estimate
that's not
from
what
back
they're
in
asking them to do.
2011.
Yeah, but if they walk away from the whole deal, then the city is then on the hook for the whole works.
well, you're talking about the
Eventually.
bridge art too, which is.
Yeah, and we're on the hook for that too.
Well, yeah, yeah. And, I mean, I don't know if they would do a south, I don't think of this as walking away from the deal. I guess that's the difference. My vote no was not to walk away from the deal. My vote no was to say, let's explore a little farther if a part of this can include something. It would have to work for the developer too. So it's not trying to strong arm. It's just saying that hasn't been a part of the discussion. I think now is the time of doing it. I don't want to walk away from the deal. I want to have that be a part of, some fact-finding, exploration, coming back.
I think everybody's aware of that, and I'm sure the developer and city staff are thinking along those lines. But relative to tonight's action, I think we just need to either move forward or not with the development split for West Palouse River Drive and just carry on with the affordable housing discussion as a separate module that everybody knows needs to be discussed and will be discussed.
Oh, geez. Can I
Gina.
try it again? I want to try it again. I
Ann
want
had
to
a
try to
question
hit
for
a
you,
happy
right, for
medium. Do you need to ask?
You got the floor, Gina.
Okay.
Oh, and
So,
does have a question.
I can get her a chance. I'm going to Gina.
I want us to go back to that page you had with all of the things. But let's add there where it talks about not dispersing until the end of the project. Maybe there's another clause, or there's a clause that says, with an update or a discussion or some sort of interaction about the potential for affordable housing in the development. In the motion. I'm totally not making sense anymore. But what I want to have happen is exactly this deal still, but with that moment where we are all going to feel okay if we can have the discussion with the developer. And Bill, that's probably you. I don't think it's all six of us sitting with the developer, but talk about and inform us how to include affordable housing in this kind of a deal. We need to learn a skill as well. Does that make any sense?
I think what she's asking you is to come up with a motion for him, because nobody really
trying to
knows how
come
to
up
word
with
a
a
motion.
I thought Gary had one here a moment ago.
Yeah,
With a proposal for what? You said there was a,
Negotiation
to
for,
include, to direct staff, again with the parameters of your first motion, and direct staff to negotiate with the developer regarding a potential affordable housing participation.
comma, and report back to the council. How about that?
That works for me.
Yeah, we'll be bringing back the agreement anyway. That was the direction. If
so-
that motion
So
passed.
there's our moment, right? We have instructed staff to get into this arrangement, which is good for our city, and we have instructed him to negotiate some degree of affordable housing in the development, and he will come back with the agreement with that discussion in it as an update.
Am I on the screen? Can you see me?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear, I thought Brandy was in the process of making a motion earlier in the evening that I would like to hear. My preference for sequencing would be to not commit until that conversation is had, if that's what's being proposed in this possible second motion.
And I think the direction from the council is only to prepare an agreement for your consideration. With these provisions, the council still has the final ability to review and approve that agreement.
Yes,
Yeah, that was the whole intent of saying.
exactly.
Direct staff to move forward with an agreement with those parameters and bring it back for council review and approval.
Okay, does
Yeah,
that make
so-
sense as far as the motion
Yes,
goes?
I think so. It's just included in that work. We'll be coming back with the discussions of some possibilities of some component of affordable housing within it for our consideration.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I would second that motion.
Yay.
And I'm not exactly sure, ladies and gentlemen, how to say all that, because we talked about a page and a half, but here's what I've got: to direct staff to negotiate with the developer on fair housing or affordable housing with an agreement for consideration. Is that correct? To bring back to this body?
Yes, sir.
Is that how I understand it? So,
To include the
Appended to,
Yes.
staff recommendation.
Yeah, I'd say the direction is to direct staff to prepare an agreement for the financial contribution as outlined by staff and to include exploration of an affordable housing component for the council's consideration.
okay.
Perfect.
Yes,
Record that.
exactly.
Yes, that's it.
Exactly.
Lori, do you have that?
Perfect.
Okay, and that is okay by the motioner, Gina, and the second by Brandy. Brandy?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. I just reached my limit. I'm done.
Almost passed out.
Well, after all, it is past 9:30 for all of us. Okay, everybody understand the motion?
Yes.
Ann, you understand the motion? Okay, I'm gonna start with you.
I
Gina,
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Art. Brandy.
Aye.
And Maureen.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you very
that
much.
was a process, ladies and gentlemen, but I think everybody understands the direction. Okay, that's the end of the meeting, but however, we do have reports. And I'm gonna start reports with Ann.
nothing tonight.
Do you have anything for us, Ann?
Nothing tonight.
Okay, Gina.
Yeah. I went to a PBAC workshop, which was in fact an interim update from the consultants who are working on kind of the project management part of all of these four alternatives and looking at, if this one was implemented, here's what the timeline would be. And if this one was implemented, here's what the timeline would be. And the interesting discussion was, the bulk of the discussion was around construction costs and how to estimate that and how dramatically it affects each of the alternatives. We will have, PBAC will have the technical memo from the consultants in June. We will see it, council will see it at some point after that, but I think this was maybe the first time I realized the full magnitude of what we're talking about. These are decades-long projects. I also will go to Fair and Affordable Housing this Thursday, preceded by the URA meeting on Thursday morning. That's all I have, sir.
Okay. Sandra.
I'm so happy that we had our sustainable group in last week, because that is my report. That's what we've been talking about for 2 months now, is the great report they gave us last week. So that's it.
Okay. Arthur.
it's farmer's market season, and I'll hear about how that's going tomorrow at Farmers Market Commission.
Brandy.
Parks and Rec mostly talked about the West Palouse River Drive property, the presentation, the history, a lot of what we saw tonight. So a discussion about the parkland dedication that's required with new developments, and a proposal for the developers made for that to be postponed, to defer Phase 1 parkland dedication to a later phase, and the Parks and Rec Commission did approve of that deferral.
Okay. Maureen?
I went to P&Z, and P&Z did a whole, spent their time talking about the Harvest Hills Drive addition. And I think that issue will then come in front of us in terms of their building of townhouses and twin houses and a neighborhood business. And they had a lengthy discussion on it, and it will come before us on probably at our next meeting.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I know it's weird. Sorry. Actually, it's for the tree commission, and all I wanted to do while we had on Zoom was, Ann, did you get my email that I can cover tree commission for you?
Great.
Yes, but also Maureen said she would do it.
Oh, okay.
I'd rather have you do it.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you
Appreciate that.
both very much. I appreciate
More
it.
side conversation before we move on. I mean, I don't give a damn if we're here till midnight, people. Maureen,
I just did.
that's it, okay. All right, well, I'll give a few reports. April 28th, we had an airport board meeting, and we had a huge discussion about a Boise flight, which we've been working on for years and years, and the University of Idaho is really helping out big, President Green and his team, and we may just secure something from Alaska. They are looking at it. So, haven't got that in stone yet, but we're moving forward with it, and that looks like something that's pretty doggone promising for us. I'm kind of excited about that.
So not by June 14th, when we all want to go to Boise?
No, no, we'll have to drive or something. April 30th, AIC legislative session. Oh my gosh, ladies and gentlemen. I really don't know what to tell you other than there's another one this Friday, and I don't know what's going to happen. So I really don't have a lot of information on it because it's just kind of a mess, and I'll leave it at that. April 30th, a bright day about April 30th, was Arbor Day. And David Scott, we had it out at Old Clyde, and that was fun with the PCEI kids, and you guys saw the thing of that, planting cherry trees out there. And that is a real nice little park for the community out there. I mean, that's pretty cool. And if you haven't visited, you should go see it. It's really pretty neat. May 1st, it was the opening day of the farmer's market. Amanda was ringing the bell. I was BS with everybody I possibly could. And she was trying to get my attention, so she just took charge and went right down through there, and I was walking with her, and she was clanging the bell, and 2021 Farmers Market's kind of nice because it's back to kind of like we had it before. Not 100%, we're inching along, and we're making it, but boy, what an improvement, and folks were really having a good time. Also on May the 1st, which is kind of interesting, at the 1912 Center, we had the Martin Luther King Essay and Art Awards that usually happen in January, but because of COVID, it was a virtual thing that they had, but we did the presentations for the kids, and it was pretty nice, so I really very much enjoyed that. Of course, like I said, the year's behind us with COVID, so we're inching along, getting ourselves back closer to normal. And with that, Gary, do you have any reports for us?
Nothing that won't wait.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Everybody in favor? 9:40. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are done for the evening.